Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to unpack something called health disparities and really dig into why good health isn't always as simple as making the right choices. We'll be looking at some of those invisible systems that can either give us a boost or, well, hold us back.
So, you've heard it a million times, right? Eat your veggies, get some exercise, and you'll be healthy. But is it really that straightforward? Is our health just a result of our own personal decisions, or are there bigger forces at play? Let's get into it.
I want you to picture it like this. Think of health as a big race, but the track itself is totally unfair. Some people get to start on this smooth, clear path, maybe even a few miles ahead. But for others, their lanes are just full of obstacles, hurdles they had nothing to do with putting there. And those hurdles, things like social and economic disadvantages, can make just staying healthy a way bigger challenge. Okay, so it's super important to get the next part straight. We need to know the difference between two key ideas. On one hand, you have health differences. It's totally normal for a 90-year-old to have different health than a 20-year-old. That's just an expected part of life. But on the other side, you've got health disparities. Now, these are different. They're unfair, they're avoidable, and they're directly linked to some kind of disadvantage. They aren't natural at all. They're built into the system. These are the hurdles that get put in your lane before the race even begins. So, how exactly do these systems create those disparities? Well, let's start by taking a look at how a set of unwritten societal rules can affect something as deeply personal as our own well-being. So, a group of researchers got curious about what influences sexual satisfaction, which, is a really critical part of our overall health, both physical and emotional, and what they found points to a hidden hurdle for a whole lot of people. The study really zeroed in on this concept called heteronormativity. I know, it's a mouthful, but it's basically society's unwritten rulebook that kind of treats being straight and cisgender as the default setting. It creates the standard that, let's be real, not everyone fits into. And what the study found was pretty fascinating. For heterosexual folks, the path from being attracted to someone to feeling satisfied was pretty direct, A to B. But look at this. For queer-identified people, there was a huge extra step. They first had to navigate all this societal pressure from heteronormativity. It was a real, measurable obstacle sitting right there in their lane. So here's the kicker. This isn't just some abstract idea or theory. This societal pressure acts as a real, quantifiable barrier to a person's well-being. It is the perfect example of an invisible system creating a very real, very tangible health disparity. And this idea of invisible structures causing real harm, it just keeps building when we look at our next example, patriarchy. Let's explore how these deep-seated cultural systems can actually enable violence.
29%. Just let that number hang in the air for a second.
That's the reported rate of intimate partner violence that married women experienced in a big national survey in Pakistan. And since we know this kind of violence is often underreported, the true number is probably even higher. We are talking about a massive public health crisis. The research connects this crisis directly to patriarchal systems. These are social structures where men are just given more power, more control. And in that kind of environment, violence can become a tool to maintain that power, leading to absolutely devastating health outcomes for women. But here's the hopeful part. The research doesn't just point out the problem, it also points toward solutions. And what's really interesting is that the solutions are just as systemic as the problem. They found that violence goes down with things like education for women and their husbands, giving women a real say in household decisions, and creating strong support networks. Every single one of those things helps to rebalance that unequal power dynamic. So we've seen how societal norms and cultural traditions can create these health gaps. But what happens when the very systems that are supposed to help us are the ones that fail? Whether you're talking about heteronormativity or patriarchy, they're both these big abstract systems that create very real, very harmful barriers for people just trying to live their lives. And this leads to this fundamental gap between the support services we have and the complex lives that people are actually leading. This quote just says it all. It's from a young, queer parent who had experienced homelessness and was trying to get help. They said that as soon as they became a parent, they didn't really fit into the youth services box anymore, but they didn't fit into the adult box either. They were just stuck in this weird, lonely gray area. And that just perfectly illustrates the core issue, doesn't it? So many of our support systems are built for one kind of person, a so-called normal person. If you're a youth, the system might work. If you're a parent, it might work. But if you're both, or if you have other intersecting identities, it's so easy to just fall right through the cracks.
Okay, so if the systems are the problem, how in the world do we fix them? Well, the research actually gives us a pretty clear path forward, and it's all about changing the structures, not trying to change the people living inside them.
The big takeaway from all this is actually pretty profound. If we want health equity, we can't just keep telling people to try harder or to make better choices. We have to address the systems that are putting those hurdles in their lanes to begin with.
So, how do we build that fairer system? The sources point to a pretty clear roadmap. First, it starts with us challenging harmful norms about gender, sexuality, and power. Then, from there, we have to invest in education to empower everyone. That builds the groundwork for step 3, enacting laws that actually protect vulnerable people. And finally, we can get to work redesigning our services to actually serve the complex, real-life people who desperately need them. And at the end of the day, this is why it all matters so much. If we genuinely want to close the health gap, if we want to create a society where every single person has a fair shot at a healthy life, we have to stop just telling people to run faster. It's time we fix the rules of the game. And that kind of brings us to the end. But the question it leaves us with is a big one. What other invisible rules are out there, shaping our health and the health of the people around us? It's definitely something we're thinking about. Thanks for joining me.